Hello, friends. Today we're going to cover a very interesting topic. Imagine that you want to write a love letter to your girlfriend. You don't want anyone else to read it. I mean, if it even got leaked on the internet, it would be embarrassing and probably ruin your reputation. So you need to find a way to send her this letter without other people being able to read it. Well, you do some reading online and you find a method called symmetric encryption, where you have a password or a key that you can share with your girlfriend so that she can read your letters even after you encrypt and hide them. So, you write her this super juicy letter encrypted using your password. Go to the mailbox and you wait patiently until she gets it and texts you. "What the heck is this?" You reply, "It's a letter describing my infatuation with you, but you'll need this password to be able to read it." And then you share the password. Now she uses the same password, decrypts it, reads it, and decides she wants to give you some of her goodies. So she comes over and brings some chocolates with her. While she is over and feeding you chocolates, she gets a text from her sister. And so you ask her about her sister. Then you find her sister on Facebook. And before you know it, you're considering writing a similar letter to her sister. Now, before we continue, you should know that this analogy is very basic, but should help you understand asymmetric encryption by the end of this little story. So the next day, you write another super juicy letter about your physical needs and what you want. But this time you are intending to send it to your girlfriend's sister. So you use the same password to encrypt the message and you mail the letter to your girlfriend's sister's house. Luckily, your girlfriend's sister opens the letter, asks about the letter, and you text her the same password that you sent your girlfriend. That way she could read the letter. Now we have a problem, because a few days later, you get a letter in the mail. See, the issue with sending your password is that anyone with it can encrypt messages with it to opening a letter in the mail. You realize that it is encrypted, but you have no idea who it's from. Is it from your girlfriend or your girlfriend's sister? Or some other random dude that hacked your phone and got the password? Well, you try to read who it's from, but it just says your lover. Now we have a big problem. You might say, why didn't you just send a different password to both girls? Well, you could have, but you didn't intend on them messaging you back anyways, just on them reading the messages. Next thing you know, your girlfriend's sister left her second note to you, laying around on the table at her house, and your girlfriend saw it. And because they both have the same password, now they know what games you're playing because they both have the same key and both can read the message. In reality, you realize that anyone with your secret password, they can write a message too, and they don't even have to say who they are. Your brother could write a nasty letter to your girlfriend if he had the password and want to act as if he were you. So this is where asymmetric encryption comes in. You do some studying on theoretical physics and invent a time machine, go back a few weeks, and then still decide to write your girlfriend a letter. This time, though, you use a different encryption method. You use something called symmetric encryption. This time you have two passwords, one for creating the message and one for reading the message. So you encrypt your love letter with your private key, mail it to your girlfriend, and she asked, "What the heck is it this time?" But this time, you give her your public key. So she read your letter, decides again to give you some of her goodies. She brings chocolates over, and because you had such a good time last go-around, you ask her about her sister, and this time you are equipped with asymmetric encryption. So you can write your girlfriend's sister a letter, but this time you give her only the public key, so that she can't write back this way. You aren't confused. Only the person with the private key can write messages, and that's you. Only the people with the public key can read them. That's you. Your girlfriend and your girlfriend's sister. Let me say that again. Only you can create the messages, but you and your circle of trouble can read them. However, your girlfriend's sister wants to write you a letter. So, what happens? Well, she has her own private key and public key, and they're different from yours. So now she writes you a letter, encrypts it with her private key, and then mails it to you, so you ask her for her public key, because that's all you need to read it. And then you read the letter. In this situation, only she can create the messages, and only you and her can read them because you are the two that have her public key. So we're pretty far into this video and we really haven't even talked about cryptocurrency wallets. Well, actually, you have two keys that act in a similar manner. There is a public key that you share with your friends so that they can pay you, but there's also a private key. You do not want anyone else to have that private key. Think about it like this. Your public key is actually also your address. Anyone with your public wallet address can send you money, just like if they had your PayPal email. Now, in the first analogy, the public key was still a key. We didn't want everyone reading our secret love messages, but this is a blockchain, and we do want everyone to be able to see what we are sending. So we just share our public key. Your public key is used to see what message you wrote to verify that you actually wrote it, but it's also your address. Remember, with a public key, you can only read messages. You can't write them. So in this example, your private key is the password to your email. If you share this password, anyone can have complete and total access to your money. They can write love letters or send transactions as if they were you. With your public key, you can only receive transactions. In your private key, you can send them just like the love letter analogy. You should also know that they're related as well. In fact, your public key is generated with your private key. So if you ever forget your public key or your address, you can just use your password to regenerate it. However, someone who knows your public key will realistically never find out your private key unless you tell them. So when you send some money on a blockchain, you use your private key to sign that you actually want to send that money. This way, other people can't say this guy paid me $50 because we can actually check if they have the private key by using the public key to read the message. So think about it like this. You use your private key to stamp a transaction, and other people use your public key to ensure that it was actually stamped by you. So it's a little confusing, but let's end with an example. In this example, your name is Sam. So we write to the blockchain 01 Sam pays Mike $50. And then we stamp it with our private key. So let's break this down. The first number is a unique number. Now there is a very specific purpose for this, but I'll explain that in a bit. The second part is the actual transaction ID, saying that you are Sam, and you're paying Mike's account $50. Now the third part is where you prove that it's actually you. This is the stamp. You're essentially taking your private key and using it to encrypt the first two parts, or 01, Sam pays Mike $50. And those letters and numbers is what it comes up with. That's the stamp. Other people can check that it's really you by taking your public key and seeing if 01 Sam pays Mike $50 actually equals that stamp. If it does, they know that it's a real transaction. In other words, they know the only person who made that transaction and then produced those random numbers and letters actually had the private key to do so. So think about it like this. Your private key plus any transaction you want to do equals a stamp at the end of the transaction. Then we can check it by doing this. Your public key plus the transaction plus the right stamp tells us that it's true, but your public key plus the same transaction plus the wrong stamp will tell us that it's false. So this video is getting pretty long, but you can think about it like this is your private key can generate the stamp, while the public key can only check the stamp. So now, the problem is, what if Mike was like, well, I'll just take that initial transaction and copy and paste it 3 times. That way I get paid $150. Someone could do that, right? Well, this is where the 01 comes into play. The blockchain does not allow duplicate payments. It's just coded in a way that if you try it, it will fail. So if we wanted to pay Mike $150 in 3 different payments, the transaction would have to look like this, where that first number is changing. It has to be unique. And as you can see, by changing one thing in the transaction, we completely change how we are signing it. Now the stamp is way different because we changed one number. Anyways, other people can tell that it's still us by checking with our public key. They just do the math and say, yep, whoever made this transaction actually has a private key. So since your public key is public, anyone can read all of your transactions. They're not really secret, but what should stay secret is your ability to write and create transactions, which is what your private key is for. So to wrap this up, cryptocurrency wallets have 2 keys. One is public and one is private. The public one is your address. It's the one that you give other people when you want them to send you money. It's also used to check any transaction that you make. It can be used to make sure that anytime you send money that it is actually valid and someone else didn't spend your money. Now the private key is used to create a stamp for any transaction that you want to send to ensure that nobody else can actually send your money. It's your money, but the stamp is created in such a way that other people can verify that you were the one that created it using your public key. I hope this video helped you understand some blockchain basics. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you in the next one.